Welcome to Raising the Curve, a podcast designed to teach you everything that you need to know to be better with your money. Come and learn alongside me, Sophie Hallwright, a total beginner, from the finance expert, Victoria Harris.
So I've asked all of the questions you wish you could so that finance, investing and growing your wealth actually makes sense.
Yes, it's expert education, but that we promise will not be boring.
And in the wise words of Cher,
my mom said to me, you know, sweetheart, one day you should settle down and marry a rich man. And I said, Mom, I am a rich man.
Come and talk and learn and laugh with us, because together we really can raise the curve. Okay, so today's episode has been one that we have debated internally quite a bit on how to approach. And it's because we're not a political podcast.
well, yeah, we're not a political platform. We don't talk about politics, but then sometimes politics impact the economy, they impact the stock market, they impact your personal financial situation. So we got to talk about them.
Yeah, and I think also politics is one of those things I'm really ashamed to say that I never really got a huge amount of
Joy out of?
No, I was going to say I didn't really get much education on it when I was younger. It wasn't just handed to me. And I didn't also then seek it out when I was at an age where I really should have. And so I feel like the reason I don't talk about it a lot is because I don't feel really confident in doing that. And I know that's a really shameful thing to admit, but
It's like finances though. Like I was just listening to you speak then and I was like, you could have been talking about finances. You know, I didn't talk about it. I didn't engage in the conversation because I didn't know a lot about it.
Yeah.
And it's the same with politics, except when you're younger, you don't need to know about politics. You know what I mean? It's not like you're
you can't
10-year-old at the
vote.
playground being like, oh, what do you think about Harris or Trump? So, but as you get older, these policies start affecting you and impacting your assets or your income or the people around you. And so, yeah, you want to be engaged because it can make a huge difference. You should be engaged.
So today we're going to do a proper breakdown about the US election, about politics, and how this can and will affect your portfolio if you're investing.
Yep.
Your, not only that, but your financial situation, and actually also the US economy, but economies all over the world. This will have ripple effects because it's such a powerful country and a lot of us invest in the US stock market.
And for context, we're talking about the US election.
Sorry, did I not say that?
No,
Oh,
I
God.
don't think either of us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're talking about the election, but we're talking about the US election, which I'm sure people have realised. But it's similar for most elections, to be honest. Yes, we'll go and dig into policies that are specific to the US election, the upcoming US election. But yeah, how you think about politics and finances is the same no matter what region or who's being elected. So,
And I think something that is important to remember, which is such a fundamental, but I don't know why I didn't realise this for a long time. Politicians make policies because they want you to vote for them.
yeah, exactly.
It's not just I want to be a politician or the head of this country because I care so much about this. I mean, I'm sure there is that. But at the end of the day, you have a campaign and you have to be quite strategic about how you can get people to vote for you so that you can get into power and you can make changes. And probably some of those things they put in there because they want people to vote, right?
Yeah, it's like a kid in a playground. It's like, be my friend if I give you a cookie. You know, it's like, of course, I'll be your friend if you give me a cookie.
muffins.
Yeah, it's literally, and that's exactly what politicians are doing. They're like, vote for me and I'll reduce your taxes. Yeah. But then also what they say and what they can actually do once they're in power can also be quite different. So there's a lot of false hope, I guess.
If we were to compare exactly that to CEOs and massive companies, there is only so much that you can change in a short period of time. And so although people might have big audacious goals and promise this and that, what you can achieve in the time that you're in power, whether that's in a company or for a country, is different, right?
Very different, yeah. And you also want to put your own stamp on it. There's like an ego side of things as well. It's like, you know what, I'm going to introduce lower taxes, and then the next leader or politician comes in and they increase taxes. You know, like you can only, when you're in power, you want people to like you. And so therefore you're going to do favourable policies, not only to get in power, but to stay in power. And so it's the same as a CEO. You want to leave with a good reputation. So you want to do things that might be bad long-term for the country or for the company, but in the short term, you look good, so let's do it.
Oh, gosh. It's a bit depressing, isn't it?
Yeah. So this is why we love founders when it comes to businesses or companies because
when you're investing in them.
When you're investing, because they don't have that short-term mentality. But
that makes so much sense when you compare it in that way. So let's explain. So there's two people running for president of the United States. And actually, we got this message the other day. I think it was maybe to one of our podcasts. And someone said, hey, what do you think about maybe referring to both of them with their last names? Like we're saying Trump and Kamala. Yeah. And we were both like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. We have been doing that. Isn't that weird? To think that,
as in who?
Well, everyone is referring to her by her first name and Trump by his last name. Anyway.
Do you think that is a function of like a gender thing?
I have no idea.
Because I think it's...
But who says Donald? Oh, how's Donald going? Is Donald in power? What's Donald's policy?
Yeah, no one says Donald, But I also think Trump, his name has been so ingrained in his business and like... for so long. Do you know what I mean? He's always been Trump, if that makes sense.
I think we all...
Whereas Kamala, I personally think it's because she is... You refer to people in their first name if you're friends with them or if you know them or if you feel close to them. So I think it's almost an endearing thing.
Oh, interesting. Let's just go with their full names for this podcast.
Oh, mouthful.
Because, it sounds
Let's go
weird.
Kamala and Donald.
Okay, love it. Into it.
So Kamala, she is the... What do you call them? They're elected... The presidential candidate.
Nice.
Yeah, well.
For the Democratic
Party, yes. And now the Democratic Party is a party that is a lot more liberal than Republican Party. They focus more on social issues. They're more progressive.
So essentially the Democrats are what you would consider more left.
Yes, yeah. And the thing in America is, and there's probably some Americans listening to this podcast, but from my outside view is that it is a very split nation in terms of it's you are a Republican or a Democrat. You know, you support a Republican Party or Democratic Party. Like there is no kind of swapping in between. Whereas I think in New Zealand in particular, it's a bit more
fluid.
Like I voted Labour and I voted National in my life. You know, it's not as divided, I think is what I'm trying to say.
And also I think people are much more vocal and open about the fact that they're either supporting the Democrats or the Republicans. And whereas I feel like in New Zealand and the UK, people are way more hush-hush and it's not so much a deciding factor if you want to be friends with or hang out with someone based on their political views. Yeah. Quickly, can we just talk about the famous people that are endorsing the Democrats and Kamala? So Taylor Swift.
The biggest endorser.
Yeah, we love you. George Clooney.
Reed Hastings, who we spoke about, which is the Netflix co-founder. He recently endorsed Kamala.
Mm-hmm. Charlie XCX.
Oh, Brett.
You wanna guess the color? I've dancing to that song every morning. I feel like to leave the house being like, I'm so hot and cool.
And recently Alex Cooper.
Oh yeah. Kamala Harris was on Call Her Daddy, which was just
iconic.
Yeah, it was pretty iconic. And Beyonce and Obama, all supporters of the Democrats.
All people that I love. Yeah.
Now, Donald. He is a Republican.
Yes, he is the presidential candidate for the Republican Party. So the Republican Party is a bit more conservative. So they're a bit more right-leaning. They hold a bit more conservative views on like social issues. So like gay rights, for example, like very...
Abortion.
They're very, very opposite to Democrats.
I mean, I even think if I look at the list of celebrities that are endorsing both parties, it says a lot about what their policies are and who's leading the charge. I mean,
the biggest one being Elon Musk. Yeah. And which I think is quite surprising.
Elon Musk's daughter has come out as she's transgender woman, and he still isn't supportive of transgender rights. Yeah. So to me, that's just, I don't know what.
I think this is more to do with Tesla, to be honest, because their policies, which we'll get to in a second, that Donald is bringing in or proposing versus Kamala is a lot more, gives Tesla a lot more freedom to operate. Right. Yeah, and so I think it's a bit more like that. And Biden, who was a Democrat, pretty much killed the EV market in terms of regulation, all that. So I think it's more business focused, but I could be wrong. But yeah, it's just interesting, the alignment. Yeah, who's aligning with who? Can we chat about, before we get into some of the policies, I would love to do an overview of the last few elections. Yeah. So we had had a lot of people reaching out wanting us to do an election podcast because they're worried about how it's going to impact the US stock market, the S&P 500, their investments, all of that. I just want to caveat by saying there is no research that shows if the Democratic Party wins, the stock market does well or worse, or if the Republican Party is in, the stock market does well or worse.
Oh, it's so nice to hear that.
No, so you can sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode because there's no impact on the stock market from one party or the other or over the other. So,
which is so interesting because what most people try and claim when it comes to politics and who's in power is the economy's doing so badly and and it always seems to come down to money. So it's interesting that there's so much pressure when it comes to people stressing about finances and the election and politics when really there's no research to show that it impacts it either way.
Yeah. There is one thing, though, that the market hates, and that's uncertainty. If we think back to COVID, that was probably the biggest uncertain environment this world has ever been in this since I've been alive. And we didn't know what the world was going to look like, and the market fell off a cliff, literally. It fell about 30%.
So when Trump was running for president back in
2016 was when he was elected.
So, but around that time, there would have been a huge amount of uncertainty. I think at the time, most people really didn't think that he was going to get into power, but there was still a bit of a question mark.
And I remember when it was Donald and Hillary Clinton, and they were running, and she was a shoo-in from all the statistics, and then he came out and obviously got into power, and so yes, the market was predicting a Hillary Clinton win.
Does that mean that the market wasn't having a total meltdown?
And then it fell because he got in.
And everyone was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen
Because
now?
they're like, oh my gosh, this is so uncertain. We need to now factor in all his policies and all of that because we were so certain on Hillary. And it's like with Brexit as well. Everyone was like, well, that's not going to happen. And then when it did, the market fell because everyone's like, oh my gosh, we didn't factor this in. So it's like this whole, we need to recalculate what the future's going to look like, that kind of thing. So, but in the lead up to an election, the market can be volatile. So there is, because people don't know who's going to get into power. So they're trying to be like, they're looking at statistics and going, oh, it might be Kamala, it might be Donald, it might be Kamala, it might be Donald. And when there's no clear front runner from the get-go, then that creates uncertainty.
Okay.
So don't worry, there might be a bit of movement up and down, especially when one party might come out with quite an audacious policy they will put in when they get into power versus another, and the impact that might have and all of that. So there's a bit of movement, but that's in the short term.
Also remember, this is, the election's next week.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this when this has come out, it's not far away. So you don't have a lot of volatility or ups and downs in the market to
You don't have to do anything. Yeah, exactly. And then straight after the election, just like what we were talking about, sometimes there can be reactions as well, depending on who gets in. But usually the stock market does well, regardless of what party. So
can we do a bit of an overview then on Donald and Kamala's policies? What are the differences, and what are there some that you're talking about that are quite heavily skewed towards finance that could be impacting the stock market having a bit of a panic attack?
So firstly with Donald, so he's all...
I just love that we're calling him Donald, by the way.
I think it's also a respect thing to use people's last names. So yes, Donald, he's all about deregulation. So he's all about tax cuts as well. Has been a big one of his, which people love. Voters love tax cuts, paying less tax. Yes, please sign me up. But this is mainly for corporations and high income earners, so wealthy people.
It's interesting though, because isn't generally, I know this is again quite a broad sweeping statement, however, aren't generally Donald's
friends and
family, lower income earners? Isn't that kind of...
Yeah, so he's
so that's really interesting that one of his main policies
I don't think that'd all be low income. I mean, he's a high income earner, so he's probably doing it for his own self-promotion, but he also wants to reduce government spending on like social programs and social welfare. One key thing is, and I mean, he's talked about this forever, it's the stricter immigration policies, the wall, all of that, which I can see why he's pushing that, because there is a lot of people in middle America who have lost jobs because of people coming in from other countries. So he's playing into that, I will help you get your job back kind of thing. And
so he's kind of trying to target the high income earners with the tax cuts.
Yeah.
And then
the middle America. With kind of, we'll let less people into America to steal your jobs. effectively. I'm not saying that's
my
view. That's his view. Yeah. He's also, which you'll love, very focused on using fossil fuels and producing energy from fossil fuels.
Why would I love that?
I'm just joking.
Oh, I'm so riled up already.
So, yeah, he's got this campaign, Drill Baby Drill, and it's just all around, like, he's not...
Drill Baby Drill.
I know.
I want to hit Donald with a duck in the face.
So, yeah, he is all about screw renewable energy. And the reason that we were just talking before about Elon Musk wanting or endorsing Donald Trump is that he is planning to put on tariffs from imports from China. He's trying to bring back manufacturing into the US. So he's very US-centric in terms of, like, we're going to stop people coming.
Make America great again.
Exactly.
What about Kamala? What
Kamala, so she's naturally the opposite, increased spending on social programs, welfare. And this is the Socialist Party.
And so middle America surely would see that and be quite happy with that, right? I mean, it's almost like there's an equal and opposite policy that benefits high, middle and low income earners on both sides.
Yeah. She is on the tax side of things. Again, she's going to raise taxes for corporations and high earners, increasing capital gains tax, which we don't actually have in New Zealand.
What about in the UK? Do they have that?
Yeah, they've got capital gains tax in the UK.
What is capital gains tax?
So it's gains on investments, like the capital return. So say if stock price, for example, goes from $100 to $120, you pay capital gains tax on that $20, the return that you've made. Or on property, if you make money on property, you pay a tax on the income you've earned from that property. But yeah, if you're investing in property in New Zealand, you don't pay capital gains tax. That's why our property market just goes bananas.
So she's increasing that in the US.
Yeah, she's increasing that, yeah. So again, that's, some people might not like that. Other people might. People that probably don't own a whole lot of assets don't really care about capital gains tax. She's also very pro-growth. So she is giving tax breaks to small businesses to help them be innovative and kind of grow the economy that way. And she's also got a softer stance on cryptocurrency. So
she's a bit more open to it?
Yeah. So if she gets in, then...
So all the gamers and all the crypto guys will be voting for her?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
So overview, Donald is... It's really kind of hard because it's not as though one is targeting high income, middle or low. They're both trying to do both. Which makes sense. You obviously want as many voters as possible.
I guess Trump is more...
excuse me.
Sorry. I guess Donald is more focused on tax cuts and a protectionist kind of view on America, whereas Kamala, if I'm just summing up really, really basically, would be probably not as focused on increased tax cuts, more social welfare, but also pro-growth. So let's get America growing. Would be a good summary?
Okay, like that.
Yeah, one of the biggest impacts on the stock market from a political standpoint is any changes in corporate tax or company tax. So if companies pay more tax, they have less profit. Less profit means lower shareholder returns. So if you're cutting taxes, that really stimulates corporate growth. If, say, the curve had to pay less tax, we'd have more profit, means our share price would do really well, which means investors would be happy, the stock market would do well. Because it is an overall.
So it benefits businesses essentially.
If the corporate tax cuts.
Oh.
Corporate, yeah.
And what are they both saying about corporate tax cuts?
So they're both cutting corporate taxes, but different amounts. So Trump's is way bigger.
Oh.
Yeah. So any corporate tax cut is seen as a boost to companies' profits. Just like your personal situation, if your income tax was cut, then you'd have more money to spend.
Okay. So it's like if I'm paying less tax, I have more money.
Yeah.
If a business pays less tax, they have more money.
Exactly.
And so is the premise that if Donald is in power, that the stock market could do better?
Yeah.
Is there an underlying question mark around that, even though there's no science or like data or anything to prove?
Yeah. Just from this policy alone. So he is proposing to do $6.5 trillion in tax cuts. That's a lot, yeah. And remember, if this money's not coming in to the US government, if that $6.5 trillion is not coming in anymore because of this new policy, it has to come from somewhere else.
Yeah, where would it come from?
Probably oil and gas.
Drill, baby, drill.
Drill, baby, drill.
Oh, no.
Yes, so his tax cuts would come to $6.5 trillion. Hers would come to $4.2 trillion.
That feels a bit more realistic.
Yeah. So in that sense, his corporate tax rate cut is coming from 21 to 15%.
It's a lot.
Hers is only a reduction of like 5%, so a bit of a smaller reduction, hence the size of the cuts. But anyway, his proposed tax cut would be about a boost to S&P 500 earnings, so all the companies in the S&P 500 by about 4% on average.
So there's probably people who are only thinking with their wallet right now and thinking, I hope Donald gets in.
Yeah. But again, this is
so scary though, isn't it?
This is only like short-term stuff, It's like, yeah, and again, you got to think, okay, well, where is he going to get that $6.5 trillion from?
From the earth and the planet and the environment.
Or cutting that social welfare payments, which impacts other people. It's like, it's very chicken and egg.
It's just like all of
you can't just, it's economics. Yeah, everything is a function of something else. You can't take from here and not give to there, or you can't give to there and not take from, it's all one big pool of money that you've got to.
What about in terms of what's impacting women specifically? Are there any policies that are positive, like really obviously positively impacting women or negatively?
Yeah, so Kamala's come out with this policy around, if she gets elected, that she'll introduce a one-time payment, so about $6,000 for newborns. So it's almost like it's like a $6,000 baby bonus.
God, that would help so many people.
Yeah, it comes as a tax credit, so it's not like a cash payment. It's you get a tax credit, so like you'll pay
less tax,
$10,000 cash, and you'll get $6,000 back, kind of thing.
Okay,
yeah. So,
but her premise is to also
help support young families. Yeah,
but if she's in power, and sorry if this is like really a really silly question, but the idea of abortion being illegal in a lot of places, do you think that this is a way of helping people who potentially become mothers without wanting to?
Yeah.
They at least have some financial help?
Yeah, and I haven't looked into that policy around
Would it be
abortion.
abolished if she's in power?
I think there'd be, she's very strongly against it naturally. And on the Call Her Daddy podcast, she spoke about it in terms of how barbaric it was that he got into power and overruled Roe vs. Wade. So I think she would do everything in her power. Interestingly, a lot of other countries have tax relief for new parents.
What countries? That's amazing.
New Zealand's got other policies like working for families, etc., which help with families under a certain income getting a tax relief. It's always under a certain income.
Does Australia have a lump sum similar to this policy?
They've got tax relief, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Has Donald got any that are, I don't know, hugely beneficial or detrimental to women?
Well, he's come out, his damage has kind of been done. We're not being biased in this podcast. I'm trying not to. But no, he's come out and said, well, my tax cuts will benefit everyone, including women, which is such like a...
So that's his
answer. Yeah. Awesome. He also said he would expand that child tax credit, so that Kamala increased to $6,000. He also said he'd increase it, but he hasn't said by how much. So it could be like $2. Yeah. But I don't think that's his target market he's going for. She's going for the female voters. He's not. So hence why he's got far less policies that would impact women positively.
Is there how Donald has talked about tax cuts for particularly high earning individuals? How is that going to impact people in terms of their personal savings or investments? Or, other than the idea that they're paying less tax, is it meaning that individuals will feel like they have more money in the bank or in their portfolios?
I think if we look at both policies, I think Donald's tax cuts benefit the wealthy. So it's all this wealthy getting wealthier. If you've got tax cuts, you can invest in more things, you can save more money, you can get wealthier. And therefore the middle and lower income Americans get left behind, and that wealth gap just gets bigger and bigger.
But then what about comparatively if we looked at
Kamala's is much more progressive tax system, meaning that she's going to tax the more wealthy Americans and funnel more of that into the middle income earners by way of tax credits, like we just spoke about with the baby tax credit and deductions and stuff. So, they kind of got very stark contrast in terms of their tax policies, which you have to. If you both go out with similar tax policies, it's like, well,
how do you know what the other person's doing though?
Well, I don't know.
Well, it's like, are they going to put out their tax thing?
Yeah.
Shit,
I mean,
just ours.
But then you want to divide people so that they vote for you. Like if we both came out saying we're going to cut taxes by 10%, it's like, well, who do I vote for? You're both going to do it. You need to come out with some quite different policies so that you can get voters on board.
Is there a section in the stock market that's going to massively benefit from one side's policies versus the other?
Yeah. So if we look at one of Trump's main policies.
One of Donald's main policies.
Oh my gosh.
Don't worry, just keep going.
Is that he is supportive of fossil fuels. Drill, baby, drill. So if I throw that question back to you, what sectors do you think will do well and not do well?
Okay, right. So oil, gas, anything that's harming the environment is going to do well. Anything like renewable energies or anything that's trying to have a positive impact on the environment is probably not going to do very well. Okay, right. Yeah, that's actually, it's quite good though, because even just not the policies, but in terms of thinking about how the policies flow on to people's personal situations, they flow into the stock market, and it makes sense the way that you've explained it. Oh, I'd like to know about the 20-year holiday. How are they affected, or both of them affected? So is it benefiting older people if they vote for Donald, or vice versa? What's happening with regards to, because theirs is 401k, like the equivalent of a super or a pension.
Yeah, I think, it comes down to the two groups of Americans that they're targeting. So Donald's favouring the wealthy Americans. So all his policies are going to benefit wealthy retirees that are relying on stock market performance for their pensions, for example. That's who the policies that he's introducing is going to benefit. Kamala's, on the other hand, she's supporting Social Security. She's supporting the lower middle class Americans.
But that's not necessarily the age of people, right? So what's to say there aren't a whole lot of people that fit into that bucket that are looking to retire?
I guess it comes down to stock market performance at the end of the day, because a lot of pension money and retirement money and 20-year holiday money and KiwiSaver and 401k, and God, there's so many different types, is invested in the stock market. So what we kind of sum up in the beginning was that there's only short-term impacts that elections have on the stock market.
But long term, if we were saying Donald's in power and he's doing his drill baby drill situation, then people who are invested in 401ks or 20-year holiday funds that are heavily invested in those types of things will benefit, opposed to those who have tried to divest into different types of investment.
But remember, also coming back to the fact that politicians are only in power for a short period of time.
True.
So the next person that comes in could completely flip that and be pro-renewables, and, so it's you. What's
the point? It's just there's so much back and forth.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what is going to impact finances or the stock market in the short term? Is the answer kind of it's not?
Yep. It's really good to be involved and to vote, and because there will be impacts from certain policies that will impact you personally or impact your portfolio, but it's also, don't get stressed out by trying to react depending on who gets in power. Just realize that if you are investing for your retirement or your 20-year holiday, you've probably got 5, 10, 20, 30 years. And there will be multiple different people in power throughout that period of time. And as long as you're diversified, so you're not heavily invested in renewables or fossil fuels or healthcare or anything like that, if you're invested in the S&P 500, you're investing in all of those things, so you'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we do a few wrap-up comments? When you were researching for this episode, what were some of the top learnings or things that you thought, other than don't react? Like that last piece of advice is actually so genius. Essentially, it's going to go a little bit this way and then a little bit this way, regardless of who's in power.
Yeah.
But were there any other things that really stuck out to you as learnings when you were researching?
I think the key thing is, I think politics has got very divided. And I don't know if it's just me being more conscious of policies and leaders around the world, but I feel like social media has definitely made politics a lot more
Spicy,
dividing of people, segregated, passionate, all of that, because you've got the platforms now where not only their views, but everyone else's views can be spread. And so I think what I'm saying with that is that there can be a lot of unnecessary noise as well, in terms of you think you need to do something, you think you need to react. And
from an investment standpoint, not in terms of voting.
Sorry, yeah. And I think what's really good to remember, though, is it's great to be across these policies, because they may impact you personally. It might not be from an investment standpoint or a stock market standpoint. It might be from a tax cut standpoint, for example. So it's good to be across them from that point of view and vote for people that have policies that you want to support. But yeah, one thing is make sure you vote, because it's not just policies, it's behaviours. There's a lot more than a policy when it comes to voting for a leader of a country. And if you don't vote, you kind of can't complain.
I also think what you said about, similar to when we backtrack to founders leading companies opposed to CEOs or politicians leading countries, yes, there's not a lot you can change in 4 years, but maybe the flip side of that is there's a lot of damage you can also do in 4 years.
100%.
And so if you're not taking an active role in learning and understanding and then voting with the power that you have, you might end up seeing or living in a world that you're really not that proud of or happy with, or feeling is looking after you. You know, there's so many different elements to it. And I think it's important to think about your individual situation when it comes to, you know, what's in your bank balance, what's in your portfolio, etc. But also thinking collectively, what is this going to do to society, to other people that are in more difficult situations? I think that's such a good point. You can do a lot of damage, and we have seen politicians get into power and reverse things and do a lot of damage and take us 10 years back in terms of reverse
way. Yeah. And there are policies that could really impact, like the LGBTQ plus community, and policies that could be really good for that community. So it's like thinking about
beyond your personal situation as well as taking that into account.
Yeah. And so I also think one thing from doing this research was, and maybe it's just from the curve and how far we've come in terms of conversations about how important it is to support my community, which is women, that I'm involved in and that I care about. And so I will be voting in a way that, I'll be voting. I'm not an American.
Like, what's happening?
But I would be voting in a way that is supportive of that, because I know how important it is to progress women in terms of their participation in the workforce, their financial situation, all of that. So I think...
And I think in that is a really beautiful message, which is we can all vote for the change we want to see that we care about.
Yeah.
And for us right now, that's empowering women financially. Yeah. For someone else, it will be helping a different marginalised part of society. And if you don't vote, you're not doing your bit to support that. And so I think it's a really important underlying thing. And I remember I've said this to you before, there's this really beautiful poem, and it's all about how you can support some parts of society but be really unaware of others. And you know, it's everyone needs to step up for the things they're passionate about.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then the things you care about don't get looked after. And so it's not to say that there's anything shameful for if you listen to this episode and it was quite enlightening and you didn't know a lot of these things, because I definitely did not. But hopefully the research that Vic did and the way it was explained landed in a way that makes sense, because whether you're in the US or you're in a different part of the world, it's the same premise of how policies on different sides can really impact both the broader economy and the way that we live, as well as your own personal experiences.
And just remember, over the past 30 years, the US stock market has delivered about 10% return per year on average, and we have had 6 presidents within that time, a combination of Democrat and Republican presidents.
That was a mic drop.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to Raising the Curve. These conversations are designed to teach you everything you need to know to be better with your money, from saving to investing to talking with your friends about your salaries, all of that stuff.
And if you like what you heard, we would love if you could please hit subscribe wherever you're listening and leave a comment. Let us know what you thought about the episode.
And it only takes 1 second and it would really make our week, our month, our year.
Yeah.
So please do it. Okay. Love you.
Bye.